What's going on, y'all? It's your girl, your cousin Tanisha Peoples, live with another TDRS with my brothers, my partners in good trouble, Mr. Jason B. Allen and Mr. Nehemiah Frank. And then today we have joining us on the porch, Mr. Joseph Butler, who's repping Heal Me in Chicago, longtime activist, and also Mr. Alfred Brooks, who's in ATL, battling a natural disaster of a tornado that's been sweeping through the city. But we're so glad that you're here to join us. So how's everybody doing today?
Hey, happy Monday, y'all.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Doing well. Doing well.
Good. What happened over the weekend, y'all? I know one of the things that I wanted to jump into was this Kamala comment and the Tim Scott comment about how America isn't a racist country. Can we get into that? Let's get into it real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna let somebody else go.
I will go immediately. I will say this. I will defend our country wholeheartedly. America is not a racist country. America is a nation filled with racists. So I think that it was a fair comment. I think it just needed a little follow-up. Because again, I think, America is a nation, independent. It's a structure. It's a system, right? The system was built by racist people, so it has racist components that repeat themselves and replicate themselves. So it may be fair to say that America isn't necessarily racist, but it is run and structured by a ton of racist people. So the results are the same.
I don't know, Jay. I mean, I think that's an interesting concept, but I think, foundationally, it was built on racism. It was built on the backs of Black people. And so I would say that, it's soil, it's sown with racism, and so to say that is not inherently racist to me is inaccurate. And, I think that one of the things that we do is because obviously everybody was going in on Tim Scott, but, some people are little crickets with Kamala. And it's like we can't, pick and choose who we want to put on blast for the shit that they say, because at the end of the day, if you saying that America was not or is not racist, you are wrong. You are inaccurate, and you are, goddamn it, a threat to equality and to freedom. And so that's the thing. And I was thinking about that earlier because I know that we all rah-rah because we got a Black woman as VP and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we got to hold everybody accountable for the shit that they say, because that politically correctness will get you in trouble. And so
I would say what they don't say and what they do too. We have to hold them accountable for what they don't say and what they do as well, because I see the point that Joseph made, and it is what it is. I mean, I would ask this question: is America a Christian country? Because aren't we built off the Bible? So the answer to the question is still gonna come back to yes, because even if we say that America is a Christian country built on Christian values, then we use those same values to enslave Black people, right? And kill Native Americans and oppress women. And the list could go on. I'm just saying, then we use those same values to do just that. So at the end of the day, no matter the semantics, it still boils down to the racism in America is very prevalent. And I would dare ask other countries what they think, right? Like, what do you all think? Is America a racist country or not? And I think we all know what the answer will be. But neither here nor there. That's, I see the point.
I want to chime in, because I actually, I'm feeling a little bit about what everybody is saying. So my perspective is, if we say America is a thing, but we are also Americans, then are we divesting ourselves of being a part of this society, this union, right? So I think we have to be careful when we say things like that, because as Black people who are fighting for liberation, we are fighting for inclusion. We are fighting to always be included at every facet of what this country is. So if we deem America a thing, But then that takes away, that absolves us of our infusion in America. Then we got to be careful about that, right? So I agree with what Joseph was saying in the sense that there are many or too many racist, bigoted, discriminatory individuals in America, right? But I also believe that we are coming to a day where we are making it extremely uncomfortable to be a racist, bigot, or discriminatory individual in America. Now is the time to be dismantling white supremacy throughout all of the systems. So I agree. The white supremacy is too pervasive in America. But I'm an American, and we're all Americans. So if we deem America racist, then we are washing out our existence in America. So I think we have to be careful about both sides of it. And I
was gonna say, let me jump back here, because I think, of course, like, it's a facetious statement, but it's also very true. Like, America is an inanimate object. Like, in terms of racism is and again, I'm a nerd, so I will always go for the technical qualifications of what racism is and the way that it works or operates. Racism needs people. Like, racism needs people to hate other people. It needs people to discriminate against other people. It needs people to exercise power over, right? And so all of those things require actors. America's not doing anything independently. And America, again, just as a system, always has the ability to be corrected. Whether we say that that is a complete dismantling or not. But again, Joseph, being who I am, I believe wholeheartedly that this system is never going to be able to course correct to make space for Black people. So the only way for us to actually get to that place is to create a new system. But folks ain't about that kind of life. So again, Joseph is generally operating in the space where people are at least willing to hear him out, because I get tired of being called a anarchist in that regard. But again, America is set and built on a structure and kind of has a course where we'll never be able to fix it. Because again, you're talking about, we got a history where 99% of all of our leadership in Congress, in the Senate, in the White House has been white, rich men. And the only way for that to change is to get rid of, or to like be able to replace all of the rich white men, because it takes millions and billions of dollars to run campaigns to get elected. And that requires resources that go back for generations that we don't have. And we can't just instantly build. And so again, for me, I think we have to be in a position where we not only talk honestly and openly, but we also talk in practicality.
Man, y'all, that's what a PhD education to get you. God damn it. You know what? That's a product of CPS. CPS worked for you, JB. I'm so did anybody else want to chime in on this subject before we move on?
I mean, I think the whole system is racist. I think that Black people.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
Oh, hold on, Neo, go ahead, and then we go get Alfred in.
Yeah, so I think the whole system is racist. I think that the curriculum is racist in schools. I think that the criminal justice system is racist. I think the business community is racist. I think that the healthcare industry is racist towards Black people, and it's evident from the data when you see African Americans in various cities across the country who are living 7 to 14 years, less. They're dying quicker, earlier than white folks on average, being incarcerated at disproportionate rates. And so it just goes on. The data tells me that this country is racist. And even when it comes to Black police officers kicking Black boys, kicking Black men's asses and arresting them too. Like, we have internalized racism in us that we echo out onto our own people. So the entire system is racist. And that's just how that's what I think. So
come on, Alfred, what you got? Y'all
to disagree, but I am here to seed hope. I think, I think too often we kind of look at the issues that are here, and we become hopeless. Like, we just can't make it. Like, there's no way we're going to fix it. And I think that's false. The overt racism and suppressive behavior that we're seeing, especially as it goes to in the way of policy, policing, healthcare, incarceration, etc. We're seeing it happening this way because America is becoming more brown. So when we talk about like, the change isn't going to come, that is a lie. Every generation of America is becoming more brown. This is why we see them wanting to build walls, because it's becoming too brown. This is why we see people pushing back against a woman's right to decide whether or not to have an abortion. That's happening because you need more white babies to be born because the country is becoming more brown. So we're almost missing what is actually happening. And I'm sorry, a PhD don't give you that. You could just look at what's happening in real life around us. So I would say you don't even necessarily have to subscribe to the academy in order to have enlightenment or understanding as to what is happening.
Yeah, I feel that. I totally feel that. I would say, so for me, y'all know I always have a book, right? So my book still is the book your church doesn't want you to read. And, it's talking about, this is also a spiritual fight. We don't talk about this enough. Even in the history of what we've learned. That's why I asked the question. So, if America is considered to be a Christian nation built off of biblical principles, are we racist? And to a point, racism has always existed, going back to, the 15th century. It talks about the war. At the root of this, there has always been a division between what people look like. And race has always played a role in that. Now, our friends and family at NPU, the National Parents Union, will say we are one race, right? That's what we should be teaching. My students will say, why do we still learn the people of colors instead of their culture and who they are? We identify people by color, but that's a part of the system, right? So to Shivy's point, I do feel like it's hope. There's liberation in what we're doing right now, which is having the conversation, because if I'm Christian, but I've been taught that Muslims are going to hell and they're no good for me, then how am I ever going to be able to build bridges with people who look like me? But it's a part of the plan, right, to keep us divided. So we'll look at the naturalists like they're crazy because they're in nature and they're searching for healing, but it doesn't necessarily align to what we're doing. So it goes back to the systems. It's not so much of the people, it's the people that created the systems that they knew would work to keep us in the positions that, quite frankly, we're still in right now.
Yeah, I think also, like, we have a number of things happening. So, like, you also have capitalism, right? Capitalism is this driving force in our country, which we can't shake unless, again, we restructure. And because of capitalism, there will always be winners and losers. And regardless of how our nation changes, I think what Nehemiah said is part of what it is essential for me in trying to understand this situation. It's like racism is replicated and it's ingrained in all of us. It's even taught to us to hate ourselves. So if you think that hate and that racism and that oppression is going to die out just because white people are no longer in the majority, I think that you are sorely, sorely, sorely disillusioned.
Mm. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, y'all. I think this is definitely a conversation for another day, but I want to shift gears real quick to talk about an attack, maybe a subtle attack on Black leadership across the country, because just before we came on, we got notice here in Chicago that our CEO of Chicago Public Schools is resigning. And she's been in this position for about 7.5 years now. And it's really, for me, it's kind of sad because this is a Black woman leading the third largest school district in the country. And we see this trend of leadership in Chicago, particularly, that doesn't last. And so, and we've had a few Black CEOs, and they are, for whatever, for one reason or another, booted out of office. And then it also reminds me of my friend who was a district administrator in St. Louis, was forced out of her position by white parents who were threatening her and other Black administrators for trying to diversify the school curriculum and try to diversify leadership throughout the district. And so we're seeing these subtle assaults, and I think this leads into our conversation today, but we're seeing these assaults on Black leadership where they're either being attacked by white people or they're ultimately set up to fail by the system itself. Because what I see happening here in Chicago with school attendance declining due to the pandemic and the fact that we've had a dwindling Black population anyway, is that I see more school closures on the horizon. And so Dr. Jackson may be trying to get out the way so that won't be on her record. And then there are several other leaders leaving. And so can we get into like this attack where we talk about we want to support and uplift and have Black leadership at the heads of school districts, but they're being attacked on all sides and they can't damn do the job. So what do y'all think about that? Are y'all seeing that in Atlanta? Neo, you seeing it in Tulsa? Like, what do we do about this? And let's kind of get into that conversation.
I think it comes down to the support system. Like if we just look at it at the micro level, right? We're still having an issue trying to maintain or keep Black teachers in the classroom, right? And so it's the support system that is severely lacking, especially when you get up in the higher echelons of your career. There starts to be less of us around, right? Mm-hmm. Like myself, I started this company, and now I'm like, okay, well, who's my mentor? Who's my support system? And so it's like I don't really see a lot of people like me in this industry, so I feel like I'm by myself, which is why I'm always clinging on to y'all and a few other folks, And I think that's the same issue that, she was probably dealing with. She was one of a few. How many Black superintendents that are, at that level that are Black and female across the entire country that she can just say, look, I'm having this issue. I'm stressed out about my job. There's not many.
Right. I feel that.
I would definitely add and say that we also have to stop throwing Black people into the lion's den. We want change, right? But then we want to say, okay, you go and be the first Black mayor of this traditionally, or heavily populated white community or white area that doesn't have the same ideas as you, but we want to fight for equity. So you go. And we like to do that. We do that too often, but it's a narrative of the system of media, because the media produces that, oh yeah, George Floyd just wanted to willingly give up his life. Breonna Taylor went to bed saying, you know what? I'm going to give up my life so that they could continue to have a narrative to say that we need police reform. These people are not giving up their lives. They want to live. But we're thrown into situations where Black people have to change something that we didn't create. And so a lot of times we're in spaces where we're the only Black person, we're the only brown person, we're the only female, we're the only this or that in a space that does not welcome us. And so what are the psychological damages, right? What is the mental damage, the emotional baggage that has to go? And you're in a room and it's like people are disrespecting you. We're seeing this in, art and hearing this in music. People are constantly disrespecting you. Look at Them, that is on Prime TV, and it shows how Black people are trying to assimilate into spaces that don't accept them and the spiritual damage that it does. So it's a lot to say that, hey, we want Black people to be in these spaces. And, Shivy is running for Atlanta City Council. And, what I'm doing is saying, hey, let's not just say we like what this brother is doing, but we got to invest, right? And see, that's what we don't do. I'm going to leave the conversation on that. We want Black people to sacrifice their lives, but we won't invest in them. We won't support them. We won't make sure that they have the resources that they need so that they could be sustained and then also make the change that we want to see. We let them go out there and fend for themselves.
No, I'm gonna have to concur with you. And Jason, I appreciate you for the steadfast support always, even before it was a consideration for me to run for Atlanta City Council. But I think everybody's not necessarily built to lead in that kind of way, right? Atlanta is a very unique place where Black leadership at this point of history is like a norm, right? But all skin folk ain't kin folk, because we got Black folk in leadership out here that push agendas that are suppressive and oppressive to our people on a consistent basis. And many of them, a lot of times, are legacies of civil rights legends. So you wouldn't even expect it. They're getting elected because they name says social justice, but their policies say self-interest. And that's why I'm running. That's why I'm running right now, right? I'm going against someone whose father is a civil rights legend in Atlanta. but will do everything to create more beds for jails, will do everything to criminalize what it is to be Black. But people would never know it because we don't pay enough attention to local politics, which has a lot to do with why people don't get the support that they deserve, right? A lot of folk, especially within our communities, when it comes to schools, they're not going in an uproar until the schools start closing.
Facts.
Until their neighborhood school starts closing, do they even care to get tapped into the process? Or I'm not even gonna say care, I'm gonna say prioritize. So what happens is, and I've been telling people this since last semester. Here we're in a block schedule, so I'm talking semesters, right, not quarters. So last semester, we're doing standardized testing in December. Now I'm telling everybody, y'all mad about standardized testing. Y'all are like, yo, it doesn't make sense for us to be testing. We should stop testing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't a priority. Now, what I'm saying to everybody is, so long as you allow them to conduct standardized testing, you are now allowing them to start grading our schools and then start deeming our schools opportunity districts, opportunity schools, and opportunity zones. And what that is going to do is allow them to now put state control, for-profit control of our school systems. Then you have a takeover, and now you're New Orleans. And what happens is now you start pushing in all the charter school systems, you start pushing out all of the public school systems, and then what happens? Now the value of your home starts declining. And so now you are about to see the largest capital still of Black home ownership, and especially in a place like Atlanta, Chicago, etc., right? And so now all of the infrastructure, our wealth, everything starts to crumble around us. And why? Because you don't want to pay attention to simple things like standardized testing. When folks are going to look at your school and they're going to say, I don't want to move in that neighborhood, look at their test scores. And so now you're going to be crying because your $200,000 house is a $130,000 house. Your $300,000 house is a $150,000 house. All because you don't want to pay attention to policies and things that are going on around you. We got to do better. We go heavy on voter registration, but what do we do about voter education?
Ooh, Brooks, hey, I don't know what y'all had for dinner last night. Y'all had some sturdy Sunday plates. We all came in here preaching today. Let's just keep the party going. And while Brooks was talking about, can I call you Brooks? I just done named you. I done gave you a nickname. I'm gonna call you Brooks anyway because I like it.
Nah, that's fine. My whole name is
the queen of the platform, the only queen today. So while we're on the subject of policy, and we're gonna jump into today's topic, which is critical race theory and how lawmakers are trying to ban that in schools, right? And so I think it goes along with what we've been talking about around, setting Black leadership up for failure and trying to oust people for diversifying curriculum in schools and, leadership. And so last week, actually two things happened. So last week, came across an article that said that Idaho was pushing a bill to ban the teaching of critical race theory in schools and everything related to it. The related to it piece is what really pissed me off. And then I came across another piece where a former colleague posted about basically all of these white parents crying about schools trying to make their kids woke. And so it was interesting to me. It pissed me off because it's like last year, everybody was like, oh, Black Lives Matter. And I was wondering how long it was going to take for that shit to pass, because here we go this year and y'all steady passing policies that say otherwise. And y'all mad about trying to have real conversations in schools about history and about the state of affairs between Black and white people and race relations, period, and racism in America. And y'all don't want to talk about that shit. And so when you put a bill out or you pass policy that bans critical race theory and everything related to it, to me, that says there's another effort around y'all trying to ban the true teaching of American history, which is powerful to Black people, which really, breaks white people down to size and their brutality and their inhumanity, all that shit. And so I want to get into that today because it was really, really frustrating to me. It's not just about the framework of critical race theory. It's about this suppression of education overall that's pissing me off because y'all don't want to teach our kids the real. So let me hear what y'all think about it, because Neo, I know you got something to say because one of those pieces is from your favorite person. We ain't gonna put no names out there. We ain't gonna be messy today.
Yeah, so I'm definitely about to hop in. Let me tell y'all, we getting ready to open this damn museum here talking about Black Wall Street history and what happened in the bombing and this white mob that then came in and burnt down my community. And the governor is sitting on the damn race massacre commission. He's one of the commissioners. And so the bill then went through the Senate. It then went through the House Bill 1775 is what they're calling it. And now it's sitting on the governor's desk. And so, you know, I'm over here screaming, calling folks. I'm like, look, you better do something, because if the governor signs House Bill 1775 into law, you know, that means that why the hell did we build this museum in the first place? To teach people about the massacre and about racism. Like, why would we even build this? Why would we even have passed curriculum to make it, you know, to make teachers teach about what happened in 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or the Red Summers that took place prior to the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre? So it's really a shame, but I really think it comes down to white people wanting to protect their children from white guilt. And to be honest with you, this is the way that I see it. If there is a teacher, whether they're Black, white, Indian, it don't matter. If a teacher is out there making any of their students, no matter what their race is, feel guilty about some shit that took place years ago, then they're not a good teacher. A kid shouldn't leave the classroom feeling like shit. You know what I mean? And so I think that's where they're missing the mark at. They think that, you know, teachers are out to get white boys, and that's not the case. Now, there's some teachers that do that, and they don't need to be teaching, you know. But, you know, I really think that it really is a mess. I'm gonna let somebody else speak in, but you know where I'm at. I'm praying to God that this governor vetoes this bill.
Yeah, I'll hop in right quick and let someone else was ready off of mute. You know, I think that, you know, Tanisha, you said we're not being messy, and you know I'm gonna go there because I feel like a lot of times we are hush mouth about things that need to be stated. We have too many white allies who are calling themselves white allies in organizations that are focusing on equity and change. And we have Black people that are strategically stacked in these same organizations who really don't want to see change. What they want to see are their pockets filled so they can go and drive a nice fancy car and then say, oh, I did this work for the people. And let me be clear about this, because, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a nice car at all. Because, you know, people try to discredit what you say. And I want to be very clear about that. Black people deserve nice things. If you have it, then you need to go out and get it. But stop using the pain of our people to come up, because that's what people have done for so long. And I see white allies that have done it. You know, you've been connected to organizations that some of us are a part of. And now you're fixing your mouth to come against the very movement. Baby, I had peeped that from the beginning. See, that was my thing. I'm always watchful of white allies.
They slip was showing.
Yeah, your slip was showing. Yeah, most definitely. Like, we have to be mindful of that, because it's a strategy. Like, my thing is, I'm all about strategy. This is one of the reasons why I'm still to this day connected to the People's Uprising, because all of our activists have a strategy, right? Like, you know, Neo is doing his work in Tulsa and Atlanta. It's a strategy behind it, because those race massacres, they are all connected. But see, how do we get people to woke about that? So we have to be mindful of white people who are coming in organizations saying, oh, I want equity and change. But then you can write a piece, or you can go on a podcast, or you can go into private meetings and speak against the very thing that you're saying that you're doing in organizations. And we got to be smarter about that. We need better strategies to sniff out the people that ain't coming in to build change. We got to put on some better, you know, bifocals to see those slips hanging, so we know, like, hey, you're not here for change. And they could be white, red, yellow, black, blue, green, purple, orange, gray, in between. It doesn't matter. We just need to be able to see the enemy for who he is. Or who.
And if I can just say something real quick now, I'm looking sideways at Kamala now. After that statement, I'm like, girl, how much context can you give after making a statement like that? Yeah. You know, and like your words, like they have, you know, they have a impact, you know, like what is that going to do for police reform, you know, in all of these communities? Does that reverse? Some folks say that, some Black journalists say, oh, it doesn't. And some say that it does hurt police reform. So you have to, I mean, I'm looking at everybody sideways that ain't.
But we should remember this from her role, right, in the 90s. Like, we should remember her track record. So this ain't the first time that she said. That's why when Tanisha said that people weren't in the uproar, I was like, maybe people were just like, you know what? But we've heard it all before. Shout out to Sunshine Anderson. Like, we've heard it all before. We've seen this. So I expect her to do it, just like Fonnie Willis. She pimped my students. She was like, hey, I'm all about social justice. I'm all about getting justice for Rayshard Brooks and this family and this family and that family. And she sold them out. So you can't come back later and be like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I made a mistake, because you willingly did it. Like, you willingly did it. Like, that's not her first time making that statement. So I'm not saying don't forgive, don't forget, but we just need to be mindful of the consistency that people have and how they switch it up. If somebody is that willing to switch it up, then they're not really in the game for change.
Right. Let me
Jason,
bring Joseph in. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jason, I think you hit it on the head earlier. You said that, again, it's a spiritual thing. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and things in high places. It's really a situation where you're trying to stop telling stories. One of the things I love about critical race theory is that it centers the story of African Americans. It centers the stories of oppressed people. And part of what happens, I ain't never felt guilty about something I ain't did. And when you start talking about white guilt and white people wanting to protect other white people from white guilt, you only feel guilty if you're perpetuating the system. You only feel guilty if you are benefiting from the system. And if you want to stop feeling guilty, stop doing bad things. That's kind of my philosophy. But I think the other part of it is for us to remember that the laws do not get to regulate who we are and what we do. And although critical race theory is under assault, which is terrifying for me because that's what my degree is in, is critical race theory, we also have to consider the fact that no matter what the law is, you can't ever stop me from telling my story. And part of what white people are experiencing in the world today is that those stories for African Americans are waiting. Like, for some people, you have a life that allows you to only be uncomfortable because of the fact that you don't have enough money. For some people, you are only uncomfortable because you had a terrible childhood. You got a lot of trauma. But again, when you start to look at what the African American community has gone through as a whole, as a community, what you start to see is there are assaults at every level. And there is no easy way for us to push that off. So when I start to tell you my story, when I tell you that in elementary school, I had to get on 2 to 3 buses to get to school. And it took me an hour to get to school because my parents wanted to make sure that I got the best education possible, which meant that, again, you had kids getting up at 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning just to make it 2 hours across the city. Mm-hmm. Those are real experiences, and you can't fight against that. Ain't no amount of it wasn't me or I didn't do that to you that matters. When you start to think about I benefit and I perpetuate a system that makes this possible, that's what is under attack right now, is us telling our stories. And I want to encourage us to continue to put them out there. I think that the new Harlem Renaissance emerging in the Black community in terms of the arts is phenomenal because it allows us to see ourselves in a different light. And that is the thing that people are afraid of and terrified of.
Jason, can you not Jason, Joseph, I'm sorry, it's too many J's on the show today. Can you just tell us real quick, because, when I wrote my piece last week about what this band of critical race theory really is, I honestly hadn't done a lot of in-depth research into the framework itself, because I feel like you said, I live this every day. If there was no such thing as racism, then critical race theory wouldn't have been born, right? And so obviously there's a need. But for the viewers, can you tell us exactly what critical race theory is and what is not? Because I think that they're harping on what it is as far as, again, disempowering white people and telling these stories and all this stuff. And people really don't know what it is. And so they making shit up and trying to call it policy that's harmful to our kids.
So I have to, of course, start with the fact that, like, it pisses me off that I am in the academy, not of the academy, but I'm in the academy. And critical race theory is not a theory. It is a set of tenets, because the academy still hasn't embraced critical race theory as a real concept. Mm-hmm. And so we as academics are still fighting for the recognition of the field. And so that's one of the things. But one of the things I will share is critical race theory is, again, a set of 5 primary tenets. It's the idea that racism is ordinary. So what that basically means is, like, racism has become so ingrained in our everyday lives that it's hard for us to recognize it. That's why you have these conversations around microaggressions, because we as people of color are constantly asking ourselves, did that really just happen? And does it mean what it means? And that's what critical race centers. And it is also the idea of intersectionality. So all of the things about us overlap, and we all get an opportunity to experience all of those convergences. So I'm a Black man, but I'm also a Christian Black man. So that comes with a different set of oppressions, a different set of engagements in the world around me. So again, that's part of what critical race theory engages. The other part is the social construction of race, the idea that race is consistently rebuilt and reformed in our society, which is why we haven't been able to shake it, which is really why I made the comments that I made earlier. Not that we as a community aren't doing great work and making great strides towards progress, but it's the reality that the system of racism is ever evolving. And so whatever we do to course correct, it changes again to kind of dodge us and make the issue even harder to fight. And then I think number 4 is the idea of what I said before, is like that storytelling. Whereas America teaches us in schools that the Pilgrims and the Native Americans sat down at a happy dinner and shared turkey. That is a lie. And in order for us to counteract that story, we have to tell the truth that y'all came in, raped, stole, and murdered folks. And if anybody had dinner, it was probably a whole bunch of Native Americans in a fence that y'all caged up somewhere who had to watch y'all eat dinner. And that's the moral of the reality of what happened. And people don't want to hear that. And so again, that's why we're attacking it. And the last part of it is the notion that like we center whiteness. And so, like, again, we prioritize this Eurocentric idea, and there is a world in which we do not have to dream based on whiteness. And I think that's why I love this conversation we having today, because this is a space where Blackness is free to exist absent of whiteness.
Yes, we run wild and free over here. And so with that foundation and what critical race theory is and this assault, how I want to, specifically direct this question to Brooks and Jason and also Neo as a former educator. How do we kind of get around these rolling bans of these teachings in school to ensure that our kids are still getting the lessons and the education that they need and deserve, not only to be self-determined, but to fight against the history that has oppressed us and the present that oppresses us? How do we get around these things? Because we know that more states, particularly red states, are going to make this happen.
Well, I'm going to say this, look, there ain't no way around it, because the law is the law. The law is the law wherever you're at. And so I had a teacher hit me up last night saying they're going to quit if the governor signs the bill because they don't want to have to get fired from their own job. So I think that that's probably going to happen, in a lot of spaces where, folks are white teachers going to be quitting because they're afraid to get fired for teaching about the women's suffrage movement. You know what I mean? Like, that is how ridiculous these bills are. And so the only way to try to prevent them from happening is to, call your state senators, your state's, your governors, your elected officials, call them and get them to, push back against this legislation that's coming down the pipe. The other option is lawsuits. That would be that's the other option that we have, our lawsuit. You can teach it and be like, what's that brother's name from that movie? The Great Debaters, Denzel Washington, and get your ass arrested, and just teach whatever. Like, that's the only option at this point if the laws get passed, is just to teach it. So.
But let me ask you this real quick. I'm sorry, real quick, Brooks. I just wanted to ask Neo, because we started the show talking about how Kamala and Tim are talking about how the country, America, isn't racist. And so at this point, I'm kind of discouraged in calling our legislators because whether they're saying it publicly or behind the state house doors, can we trust them? when we know that we got Black people talking about, well, America ain't really racist. Like, can we trust them with these policies or to counteract these policies at this point?
The media is a powerful thing, and I'll say that. I think Brooks wants to give a shout.
Yeah.
You good? No, I mean, to answer your immediate question, you don't have to worry about trusting them if you run against them.
I feel you.
Like as long as we sit back and we expect to be represented by people who we know don't holistically represent us, we're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. Get off the sidelines, run for office yourself. And that's why I'm running for office right now, because someone who the community entrusts to represent us authentically is not. And that's why it's time for change. It just is. Now, to the other point, and I feel you, Nehemiah, there is no way around this. You go through it, right? We laud individuals like a John Lewis, and we like to hashtag good trouble, but don't want no good trouble. Woo. We want to talk about good trouble, but we don't want no smoke. You got to do it without asking for permission. Like if you look at my ceiling right now, I'm gonna show y'all my ceiling. What y'all see right there?
Let me tell you, if you was in Oklahoma, they would have snatched your ass out the classroom.
And I don't care.
Hey,
see, that's the problem. Like we move in fear as educators. There is a 800,000 teacher shortage coming into next school year. What you afraid of? There is a job for an educator everywhere. What are you afraid of? Act like you know that you are the asset that you are.
Yeah.
We don't get progress in education because educators don't realize their value.
That's right.
Stop asking permission. Start getting into the good trouble you teaching these babies about.
Right.
Do the work.
If we gonna teach them, we gotta do it.
Too, like we gotta support brothers like this too, right? So if we see a leader who the people in your own community are pushing to get elected, you got to go knock on doors. It's going to be hot as hell, but you're going to have to knock on doors in order to get these people in the door. It's going to be raining, but the outcome is going to outweigh, what the hell is on the, what's on the side of the fence that you're already on. So
engagement is a very big part of this. We have to be willing to engage people. Like, to Shivy's point, we have people that are in office. They're not speaking for the water boys. They're not speaking for Black and brown youth in poverty. They are not speaking about single Black fathers. We don't even talk about that, but we don't realize that the number of single Black fathers has grown in Atlanta, and now it's 13%. But people don't even acknowledge that because it's not a thing. We don't talk about supporting
that Black fathers are more involved in the lives of their children than any other demographic in America, based on a study in 2016 by the CDC. We don't even acknowledge that there is not a disproportionate shortage of Black father involvement.
Right. But we don't want to change the narrative.
Stereotypes.
And to Shivy's point, to teachers, educators that are watching this, you got to be about that life. I see teachers all the time. They'll say, "Oh, I can't believe you did that when you were a district administrator and you put yourself at risk and you were making a good coin." And I'm like, but is that what it's all about? So I'm gonna make a good coin, and get a good bag, knowing that children that look like me are suffering when they don't have to be. Why? Because everybody eats. We can all eat. If I'm such a great educator, I should be training my students to be able to take over every industry they put their mind to. So I'm challenging teachers. I'm challenging paraprofessionals, nurses. Stop complaining. Stop getting on Facebook and social media talking about some, oh, woe is me. We over that. We passed that. Now what are we going to do? Are we going to put something behind what we're complaining about? Are we going to build the strategy? Because my thing is, why do I keep going to people that I know are not going to support me when there are millions of people that are suffering? We ain't even really going to the people who are suffering. We're going to the people who we think can just get us something quick. We want to put that Family Dollar Band-Aid on major issues that need surgery, that need real attention. But we can't heal, right? We can't really educate because we want to keep putting these cheap Band-Aids on our real issues, and we got to get into the issues and not be fearful of doing that.
Correct. Also, I want to say this. Critical race theory doesn't matter if you don't have culturally responsive pedagogy first.
Oh.
What good is it to talk about blackness without normalizing blackness within the academics and within the academy, within schools? Like, it is so long as a black child feels like, or a brown child feels like they gotta walk to the door of a school building and decide a binary choice. Am I going to be my authentic self, or am I going to default what is considered to be Eurocentric white values of being smart? Which one? So long as that child has to make that decision to split themselves as to who they are, critical race theory isn't even going to matter. It ain't going to matter if you don't consider that child's the language of their nurturer, how their mother speaks at home, to be worthy to be spoken in your classroom. Then I don't give a damn that you want to talk about race. If you want to talk about any of these things, when you don't even see a legitimacy of my culture. You don't even recognize my ability to say what up or hello as both being worthy of existing within one space. So until we have more culturally responsive educators, we having a wrong conversation focusing on this critical race.
Y'all, let me tell you right now.
That's it. Come on, now.
Brother, because I'm about to start crying over here, shit.
Baby.
Because let me tell you, when I taught English at my school 99% black, right? 99% black. And we had teachers, even black teachers, that were like, "Oh, you got to make sure your kids speak proper English." And I'm like, "Proper? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that's it.
We're boxing our kids. That's how we all speak at home. Shit, you know, like why would I want to mute my kids' culture? You know what I mean? I'm like, look, there's a certain audience that you're gonna write to. I'm gonna teach you how to write to each audience. You know, if we're doing academic writing, this is standard English that we use. If you're speaking to, if you're writing a poem to, somebody in your hood, then this is, you can use exactly how y'all speak. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with any of it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
Hold on, y'all.
Tanisha, go ahead.
Go ahead, bro.
I was just gonna say this one quick point. So many of older generations get on the young people about saying we are not our ancestors, that whole movement. And I get their narrative behind why they're saying that. But for the kids that are saying that, they're not talking about, oh, our ancestors were just willingly sitting there. We forget that they are talking about their elders. They're talking about the very people that they saw silent when you want to sit up here and say Black Lives Matter. But when you had the opportunity to make change, you were silent, baby. That's teaching these young people more than anything. Our silence, what we're fearful of doing, the very notion that we can sit up here and put out a whole article like in the atmosphere and then not be willing to come out and stand with people and say, this is what we have to do to build change. Like, we have to be willing. It's our willingness. I made a comment earlier. Our willingness is what's going to help change the social dynamics in this country. Are we willing to do it? Are we comfortable with what they're giving us?
So
that's it.
Go ahead, Joseph. Go ahead, because y'all ready.
I'm like, that's the thing. It's like, I think what everybody in this room is alluding to is the reality is, forget talking about what they give us. I don't want what you give me. I don't want anything from you. I want you to get out of my way. Like, that's the thing that's most important, is like, we have had to abide by standards that are not meant for us. And when you talk about measurability, even when we go back to the conversation that we were having earlier around standardized testings and schools closing, close the schools because you created a criteria that's absolutely benign. Like, it doesn't mean anything because it's not measuring success for who we are as a people. Mm-hmm. And again, to exist and be in a world where we don't have to say, am I speaking the king's English? Who's king? He wasn't never no king to me. Like, again, it's the reality of we have been forced to live by a standard and to prescribe to a philosophy that was only ever meant to kill us. And then we wonder why we always feel exhausted and like we're always struggling, because we are trying to assimilate. Screw assimilation. I ain't trying to be like you. I want to be me. And I want you to get out of my way so that I can be the person that God created me to be.
So let me take a pause. Let me go to the church announcements real quick, y'all. So first of all, share this broadcast out. If you have not shared this out, share it now because this is a lit conversation. Share it out, like it, comment. That's first on the announcements. The second announcement is we playing spades and selling fish plates after this conversation because we got so much more to say. The third announcement is, so earlier Brooks said, let me put the church announcements back down. Earlier Brooks said that there's no way around this policy. We got to go through it. And we've already talked about a few ways to get through it, but what are other ways, particularly for people who may not be interested in taking on roles as traditional politicians or roles as educators in the school? How does the average Black person, the average person on the ground, activist, parent, whomever, how do we get through these racist and oppressive policies so that we can better our kids?
I think it starts with everybody knowing what their role is. Shivy mentioned this earlier. We all ain't gonna fight this in the same way. Everybody isn't built to have conversations like what we're doing right now. Everyone isn't built to go out and, go into public office or even stand in the classroom. We have to stop forcing people to do things. We need people to dwell in their natural abilities and their purpose. Because if we do that, then if I know my purpose is to help gather people, then I know I can connect with Shivy and get people to start voting for him and getting people to start donating. If I know what Joseph's purpose is, right, then I can see what my purpose is to help persuade these professors at the universities to say, listen, we need to do this because that's my niche. I'm networking with them. I'm already working with them. I have relationships with them. So when people ask, well, what can I do? I ask them, but baby, what is your gift? Because see, if I know what my gift is, you don't have to tell me what to do. I know how to show up. When Shivy says I'm running for office, I already know. Atlanta Student Coalition, listen, my brother is running. He's doing this. This is what I need y'all help to do. And they already are working because they know. Because I know my purpose. I know his purpose. So I'm going to put it out there that when we know what our purpose is, then we know how to show up and fight. Some people's purpose is to be that person out there to have that video camera ready. Because when the police start to act up, I need to record this, and then I need to be sending Nunu to go to get the neighbor in case they try to come over here and get me. I need somebody to have my back. But you got to know what your purpose is. So I'm going to say purpose, knowing what your purpose is and work in your lane.
Come on, mute, Joseph. Come on.
My bad. I think that's so essential, Doc. Like the reality is, I think people get caught up even in those like analogies of the body. Like again, if everybody is an eye, then what's the eye for? What's the point? What's the purpose? How do we move? How do we think? How do we flow? And the reason why I'm enjoying this conversation is because I think that not only is it a room full of like educated people, it's also a room full of educators who are inspiring the next generation. And that's the reality of what we need to do when we talk about time, energy, and investment. I am not interested in going to another rally. I'm not interested in going to another protest. I spent my entire youth doing that. What I'm interested in is working with our children and helping them understand that the rules that the world gives you to live by are false. They're not real. And that the reality is that there is something inside of you that every day, if you could do it all day, you would be the happiest version of yourself. And I tell you to pursue it wholeheartedly and allow us to give you the tools and the resources to continue to do it to the best of your ability. And I think that's where we are best poised to have success in changing this community and changing the environment and changing the way that we engage and deal and work through racism is if we allow our children to be whoever it is that God created them to be and to live on purpose.
And if I can just say, like, so Zakiya Jabbar, she had mentioned, bottom line, though, we need our own schools. So I'm like, we either need to take over the damn schools or we need to have our own schools. And I wholeheartedly believe in that because we can create our own safe spaces. No kid is safe in a school where, they think that critical race theory is somehow demonic. You know what I mean? Like, like, why would I want to send my kid to a school where even the teachers or the culture thinks that? You know what I mean? So I definitely think like we either need to get in there and take over the schools. We need to be more involved, or we need to create our own schools.
Yeah, and I mean, even with creating our own schools, we still need to fight for changing the funding formulas for our traditional public schools. Because here's the reality. Aren't we all taxpaying citizens, unlike Donald Trump and his crew of people? We are tax-paying citizens. So you mean to tell me, and I have to educate parents and people who move into the city, baby, you are paying for these same public schools that are failing kids, and then you complaining about crime, and you're complaining about economic and workforce development, but you sending your pennies and your dimes to the same schools that aren't doing what they need to be doing. So changing the funding formula, making sure that these funds are going to the school districts in an equitable fashion so that it leaves room for, you know, people like myself to come in and say, listen, we building the 7 Pillars Career Academy 5.0. And we're going to be teaching specifically social justice, and we have the means and the funds and the financials to do that. But we got to change the funding formulas, while we're also building and while we're also supporting those people that have current programs. Hence, HBCUs. I didn't go to HBCU, but I still send my money to Morris Brown. It ain't going to the University of West Georgia that let white people break into my apartment and threaten to kill me for trying to run to be the second African American to be SGA president and change things. They were going to kill me. They spray painted nigger all over buildings at a predominantly white institution. And you think I'm sending my money there? No, I'm sending it to Morris Brown. I didn't go to Morris Brown, but it's a historically black college. So we can start there, right? Putting our money where our mouth is and investing in what's already out there. We ain't got to wait. Do it now.
That right there is the biggest part, man. I know for me, running for office, running for city council here in Atlanta, the majority of my donors, right, the people who rock with me through my social media platform, whatever, my campaign is the very first time they have ever contributed to a campaign ever. And in other cultures, that is a norm. This is what they do. They invest in leadership that represents them. And that's why they're getting leadership that comes in and represents them. But also, we got to be picking leaders that understand the real root of problems and not just dealing with the symptoms of the problems. When we talk about schools, if we are not having a real conversation about what you're saying, Jason, which is basically we need to divorce property taxes from school funding. So long as it works that way, you will always be able to concentrate wealth in particular areas and give you certain outcomes. It will always be that way. So until we have that conversation, nothing's going to change. Until we have a conversation about how the census works. I mean, come on, how many of us get annoyed by people knocking on the door, didn't want to tap in with the census and those type of things, right? But at the same time, maybe you did fill out your census, right? But you don't go vote for your state house reps. So the state house reps, we talk about, oh, Georgia blue, Georgia blue, Georgia blue. No, it ain't. Because over at the state house is still run by Republicans. And this summer, they're going to be redrawing the district lines. And some of these black women who we love that are in the state legislature here in Georgia, they about to draw them in the same district where they're going to have to run against each other. What they going to do? They're going to concentrate black voter power. And so instead of having 2 strong sisters, you get 1. See, these are the type of things that happen over and over again. But if we control the state house, then guess what? We can redraw those lines so that we can have more equitable districting. But we still allow gerrymandering to happen throughout the state, throughout the country. And so therefore, you can have a minority of individuals representing a majority of people, giving you a minority's perspective. And when I say minority, I ain't talking about BIPOC people, y'all. Let me be clear. When I say minority individuals, I'm talking about conservative thinkers. I'm talking about people, and I can't even say conservative thinkers because let's be real, most black people conservative. Mm-hmm. But folks don't want to have that conversation.
We ain't ready. Say that.
They ain't ready for that yet.
I'm just saying. That's why 2008 in California, you can get California to give its electoral college votes to Barack Obama to vote against gay marriage. That's what that looks like. You know what I'm saying? So we gotta be real about the fact that even within our own culture, we're not as liberal as we think we are. So a lot of times we give allowances to a lot of this bigotry and racism because it comes with individuals who on the economic side don't agree with you and don't want to see anything happen for you. See, this whole race thing is a capitalism play, people. This whole race thing is about money. Because the reality is that poor whites and poor blacks don't have much different from each other than the color of our skin, which is why race is used as a tool to keep those who don't have from being unified, so that those, the 2% who have 80% of all of our money, are able to continue the systems that they've been perpetuating. Yeah. Y'all,
people are doing what they've been trained to do.
Yo, Jesus.
Yeah, this is I don't think the people knew that this was gonna be a spiritual revival today.
Hell, I didn't
preaching
know.
and teaching. Yeah, I was ready. When they said that storm was coming, I was already getting ready for the day. Like, I didn't even know the storm was coming because I was that in tune with the ancestors and trying to plan, right? And the storm is right here. It's happening. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know, because I ain't got time to worry about that. I got to stay focused on my purpose. And I want to go back to that. If everybody knows what their purpose is, start searching what your purpose is. You can't wait for Google. Is not going to tell you what your purpose is. The public school system is not going to tell you what your purpose is. These universities are not going to tell you what your purpose is. You got to spend time. All of this time that we spend on social media, liking stuff and, watching these shows and going to the movies and, engaging in these debates, we invest in all these other things, but we don't invest in ourselves. And then we stuck in these conversations about what we can do. And I'm like, baby, what's your purpose? See, if you took a lot of that time and started investing it in you, see, we know what we're trying to do is help the masses of people, because I got to think about these people that are on the wall behind me. Like, the connection is they knew what their purpose was and they had a strategy to help liberate the minds of Black and brown people. Because if our minds get liberated, then there ain't no stopping us. We'll know what our purpose is and we know what we're called.
Jason, I think a lot of us don't know the difference. And this is why many of our young people, and I would say adult people, are not able to find their purpose. We don't know the difference between joy and happiness. See, until you understand what is the difference, the nuance between joy and happiness, you will never understand your purpose. On the first day when my students come into the classroom, I say to them, what gives you joy? What gives you happiness? And they think they're the same thing. You see, the word happiness is rooted in the word happen, which means it's fleeting, which means it happens in a moment, which means once you have it, you experience it, it passes, and then you got to do it again, right? Sex brings a lot of people happiness. Drugs bring a lot of people happiness. Money brings a lot of people happiness, right? I teach economics. This is my economics classroom, y'all, right? It is all cyclical. It has times when it's up, it has times when it's down, okay? And you're always going to have to recharge. But joy is forever. Joy is when you at the funeral and you laughing, when y'all eating afterwards, right? And you're finding you're smiling at each other and you're enjoying each other because you're remembering things that will always matter. Joy is walking across a graduation stage. It's your wedding day. It's the birth of your child, right? It is achieved. It's earned, right? So when we start talking about the difference between the two, you got to understand that your purpose is grounded in your joy. It is the thing that matters more than what capitalism says to you matters. Joy is about what you are willing to die for, but also what you're willing to live for. See, when we are able to understand what our joys are, then we understand how we're able to give to others. You see, your happiness is rooted more so in your passion, and your passion is specifically for you. It's how you experience the world. But your purpose is your value add to society, what you give to others, and that brings you joy.
Do you got a book?
Yeah, that's it, man.
Do you got a book, y'all? You know what? This conversation is just, clearly it's everything. And I want to let it roll on. Because
I looked at the time too. I just looked at the time.
Yeah, I'm here wondering where the shirt is.
What'd you say?
I need a shirt with that.
Yeah. Brooks, you need a shirt. Brooks, I'm gonna wear a Vocal Brooks shirt here in Chicago.
Come on.
He got a whole line, y'all. You gotta check. Hey,
look, y'all can go to Brooks 4 ATL. Y'all can go to Brooks 4 ATL right now, right? Yeah. And I do have some campaign merch that's up, and the campaign merch says "We can't wait." We can't wait. There's an emergency for change right now. There's a lot we can't wait for, right? So that is out. I do have a merch line called Alfred's Laundry. So I've got tons of merch and things like that. Y'all can follow me on Instagram at Call Me Shivy. This is one of my old merch joints. It's Teacher Appreciation Day, but I wore my inspire or retire shirt. You know what I'm saying? Because we got a lot of educators who need to go and hang it up, right? So, but
most definitely.
I'm just saying. But I really want to say thank you to you all for inviting me to share space. This got me recharged, man. Like it is. This right here is my purpose. You know, y'all brought me joy today. So I just want to say thank you for that. Y'all go to Brooks for ATL. We support, man. This Wednesday, if you're in Atlanta, I'm feeding 100 teachers. I'm feeding 100 teachers dinner for Cinco de Mayo. All right. Teamed up with a Black-owned restaurant here called Pen and Proper. Spot here in Grant Park neighborhood where I live at in Atlanta. And so just come out, man. Let's share space. Let's enjoy each other. And let's win this campaign while having fun and making it look sexy.
That's super dope, man. And this joy thing, let me tell y'all, my spirit got so happy because that's what I talk to my students about. You know, even when I talk a lot about the ancestors. A lot of times when I'm thanking God, I'm thanking the ancestors because that's the joy. Like my great grandmother lived to be 104, could barely read. She did not finish 3rd grade. But people are like, oh, you have so much from your grandma. I'm like, yeah, because they instilled in me, my great grandparents, unconditional love. See, that's how you start to have joy. Like you can look at the sun and literally think about joy, but Black people don't. Our joy is always taken from us. Every time we turn around and somebody else that looks like us is getting killed, or a kid is being snatched and they murdered or they missing, or somebody being abused. So every time we turn around, there's a fight to steal our joy. But when you don't have that purpose, right, you don't know even where to look for joy. And so this conversation was definitely that. Even if you don't get out and change anything about, you know, race theory or, you know, culturally inclusive curriculum, finding your purpose, that's the meaning of this conversation for you, and getting that joy so you can give some of that joy back to other people that look like us, because we need it.
Yeah,
definitely need that.
Joseph and Neo, y'all got any closing thoughts?
I'm good.
No, I'm just, again, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to be here with you all. This was an amazing conversation. I think, again, that reality of pursuing joy, of consistently living out your purpose, trying to figure out what we're here to do, and then also that support. Like, put your money in the things you believe in, and don't let anybody else tell you what to do with that. So, yeah, again, this was amazing. Thank you all for feeding my soul.
Y'all, I don't know about y'all, but yeah, this was definitely if this was a very filling conversation. We're all full on the panel. I hope you all are too. I hope that you all also shared this out, because when we talk about starting our own schools and investing in our own, like, I think that so many people are tied to the current systems that they're afraid to invest in our own. And we really do need our own schools. We really do need to educate our own kids, because it really is a matter of self-determination and liberation at this point. So with that said, we go head out, y'all, and we thank y'all so much for tuning in to another TDRS. We finna go play these spades and have these fish plates and continue to build community and, you know, talk about dismantling these systems and, you know, doing it for the Black folk. But until next week, y'all be good. Y'all get in the fight and y'all find y'all joy. Find your joy and find your purpose. And thank you so much, Joseph and Brooks, for coming on the show. We love y'all. Yeah, y'all, we out. Thank